I think we've done 10 meetings now, and I have completely advocated for all of you, whether you live in the river section, whether you live in the Delta, whether you live in the Bay, the South Bay. I have advocated for all of you equally. I continually said last night on the meeting that I'm fighting for equity, I'm fighting for equality, and I'm fighting for all sectors of sturgeon so that everyone can legally and can access the fishery somewhere near their geographic area of the range of sturgeon, because the sturgeon are so spread out between the bay, the delta, and the rivers. The department is saying that they have now concluded that they're coming up with their system and recommendation, which they are going to move forward with at the Wildlife Resources Committee in January, which was not what the department told us all summer. They said all summer we were going to have these meetings, ask questions, and then we were going to come along something. But the truth is that the department basically had their narrative, and they knew what they were going to do from day one. And they sat there and said, oh, yeah, we're going to listen and we're going to evaluate this, that, and whatever. And they evaluated a few questions that we asked, but the department has never came to us with different options on how to manage the sturgeon fishery. So let's get into that. We need to dive into it. But I wanted that to be clear this morning first about how frustrated and how furious and disgusted I am with a few individuals that are just falsely representing people because they're members of a Facebook page. I mean, when did it ever become popular that just because somebody liked your page to follow it meant that they're a member and that they agree with everything that you say? I mean, that would be like me telling the department that I've got 12,000 followers on this page and they're all members of mine, so all 12,000 agree with me. I've never said that in public. It's a joke. And anyone that says that is the way that it is completely false. When I go into meetings, I tell the department how many paid members I have, how many people pay to be part of the organization, so that when I walk into meetings, I can say that I represent these people on a paid forum, not on just, they liked my Facebook page and therefore they agree with me. So very frustrating. And, I hope that a lot of people remove themselves from it, because it's just completely a joke. Anyhow, moving forward, I want everyone to know that we've been fighting for just following science. I haven't ever advocated one way or the other until the actual emergency regulations on October 11th, which we advocated for keeping some type of retention open, because the science did not prove, without a shadow of a doubt, did not prove, there was no absolute proof that harvest from fisheries is causing a decline in sturgeon. There was no proof that stopping harvest on sturgeon would cause a rebound or a recovery. And the department even told me that last night when I asked that. I said, well, it's not going to fix it. And they're like, well, maybe you're right. Closing the river might not fix. We were talking about closing the river. And they said, well, we want to close the river January through May. And I said, well, it's not fair to all of the people that live in those communities in Chico, Glenn County, Colusa County, Yuba County, Sutter County, North Sacramento County, Yolo County. It's not fair to all of those citizens that live there. And that's when the sturgeon are in their area and they want access to that. Looking at all the past numbers in the upper done in the upper river, 6% of all the harvest that's ever take place, 6% happens in that upper river. But yet they think that they need to shut it down and close it, because they're saying that the stress from even catch and release on big females causes them to abort. According to Dr. John Kelly, it causes them to abort spawning. And he cited some 1988 paper. I don't know it off the top of my head. I'll be looking it up today and tomorrow to read it. But he cited some 1988 study that was done 35 years ago where somebody said that, stress is caused on a fish from fighting them on a rod and reel. Well, I mean, I'm glad that it takes a degree to figure that out. But the fact that they are blatantly saying that 30 to 40% of females will actually abort spawning because of being caught in a catch and release situation, I think is very interesting. And I would like to see and read that study and I would like to, ask questions about that study. It's not saying that I don't agree with it yet, or it's not saying that I'm saying that's BS yet, but would like to challenge it. And I think that in a democracy that's what we are supposed to do, but that's not what the department is allowing us to do. They are basically just ramrodding stuff down this committee's throat. And 5 of the 7 individuals are like, great job, you're doing great. Just shut it down, and ban harvest. And, it's going to be better for my business, one person. And, the other individual is telling him that all recreational anglers on his Facebook page are in agreement with him, that they'll travel 225 miles to go catch a sturgeon, and they'll do this and they'll do that. And it's just lies, and I'm just tired of it. And so I'm going to speak on our platform and tell you the truth. And the anglers need to hear this, because you are being falsely represented. If you're a member of that page, you're being falsely represented. And they are basically saying that, it doesn't matter what area closures the department says, and the department's talking about going to a lottery system. And that's what the department said last night. We're going to go to a lottery system, and we are going to only allow 4% exploitation rate, which is about a 50% reduction in the harvest, which what has transpired in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, we've been averaging about 8% exploitation, which means harvest. And that means that on average, we've been killing about 8% in the last 5 years, except for 2022. So I think that was 2017 to 2021. We've been killing a little over 2,000 sturgeon a year. And they believe that currently the best available science tells them that there's 33,000 slot fish currently between 40 and 60 inches in the entire system. So at 4%, that means 2025 season would start with a harvest of 1,320 tags. I'll answer questions in a minute. So the first thing that they're saying, the department is saying, is that we're going to take this lottery system and turn it into deer tags. So number one, everyone's going to be required to buy your sturgeon report card, 2024 and 2025, for all catch and release fishing. You're required. They're even going to make you start recording every single day that you go on the water. Not recording just fish anymore, but starting in 2025, you have to record like steelhead every day you're on the water, so that they can record what is called your CPUE, which is your catch per unit of effort. They want to know how many hours people are putting in and how many fish are they catching. And they've already told us multiple times that citizen science isn't accurate. Citizen science isn't good enough to set regulations on. Report card data isn't always accurate, but here we are asking for more. Data from the anglers that we are going to not use when it comes to things that we need them to use it for proper management. But when it comes to fitting the narrative, oops, we're right on in there. Let's squeeze that data right on in there and get that data set, even though we say it's useless for everything else. But if it fits the narrative of shutting our fishery down, here we go. I even told him that last night. I said, it's a joke. And one of the younger biologists said, oh, James, this is not how we're going to do it. This is just a temporary thing, and we hope to increase the quotas and build the fishery back up. And my thing to him was, I've known you for the couple of years you've worked for the department, and I knew you when you used to work at the university. And I can tell you that the truth of the matter is that in the last decade, there hasn't been one, actually the last 15 years, there hasn't been one fishery that has been closed and then reopened or benefited in the Central Valley, Sacramento Valley. There's not been one. I mean, name one fishery. Name one. I mean, the steelhead are down. The salmon is closed. The sturgeon is closing on emergency regulations and permanent change, and it is declining according to the department. Striped bass are declining. Shad are declining. I mean, the smelt are declining. One of the smelt are extinct. Black bass in the Delta are declining because they keep spraying poisons and pellets all over the Delta, saying they're doing it for navigational purposes. Catfish are declining in the Delta. Every species of fish is declining, especially the anadromous species that go from this ocean into the fresh water. And here we are talking about, a lottery system of how the department wants to manage. So the department is basically saying that They are going to close sturgeon for 2 months a year permanently, forever, of no retention at all allowed in the 2 months that are the least amount of anglers, which are July and August. So they just said that's what they're going to do, because they need to do a lottery system now that will come out in May, just like your deer tags, and you'll apply for the sturgeon tag. And they said, it's going to be something cheap, like $5 or $10 that you'll apply for it. And then 1,320 people will get drawn for the tag. So that's 1,320 fish are allowed to be harvested. We're only going to sell 1,320 tags because the department said that they want to make sure they don't go over harvest. And the first question that James Smith asked last night is, hey, have any of you ever even been sturgeon fishing? And, yeah, I have. And, okay. And James Smith said to him, and you caught a sturgeon every time, right? Your slot fish every time. And they're, no. And then they started hemming and hawing. And then it was, the tag is good for the whole year. So 1,300 lucky people. Remember, 45,000 people are buying sturgeon report cards right now. 45,000 people in California. But all of you are still going to have to buy your report card to go catch and release and pay that $10.24 this year. But starting in 2025, all of you are going to have to buy your report card. Plus, if you want a harvest tag, you have to apply for it. And then 1,320 of you lucky souls will get an actual harvest tag starting in 2025. And I asked, how are you going to release those tags? What is your plan? And they said 50% based on preference points like deer and elk, and 50% based on random draw, just randomly drawn. So I think that's very interesting that they came up with that. They didn't ask the public. They just came up with it. And then I said, well, how about we manage it a little bit differently? I mean, I'm not saying that we're trying to kill more sturgeon. I'm not saying that, we're not concerned about the species. We are. Our organization is highly concerned about the species. I would like to see more data. I'd like to see more science. I've volunteered our time of putting people on captain's boats to go tag fish. Does the department do that? No. We've volunteered to put scientists on captain's boats to pit tag fish, not disc tag, but pit tag fish. Have we had that results? No. We've offered all of these other solutions to start collecting the data that we all know that we need in order to get where we need to, but the department is unwilling. So it's, again, pushing a narrative that they want, that they are being pushed politically by these other people in this group and maybe some others, individuals, but it's mainly a few individuals and a few groups that are environmental groups that don't want you fishing for sturgeon anymore. And they are using the red tide die-off of 864 sturgeon, that is citizen science, right, that they reported from iNaturalist and San Francisco Baykeeper, and now they're saying that they're utilizing that data to determine that the sturgeon are hurting so bad that we have to now shut harvest. Well, I said last night, even if you shut down all harvest and you close sturgeon fishing, no angling, no CNR, nothing, the sturgeon will not rebound, right? They will not rebound. Tell me I'm wrong. And the scientist looked at me and stared at the screen. And I said, because you all know that the truth is that the water is what's causing these fish not to reproduce correctly. It's called cohort reconstruction. Annually, the cohort has to rebound. And if there's not good water, sturgeon don't spawn well, and then you don't have good cohorts of fish. And so we're only getting a good spawn every 5 to 7 years at the best. And so therefore, we're not getting more sturgeon recruited into the system. So stopping harvest is not going to fix that problem. Until that issue is solved, we will not see white sturgeon going up in population. We might see them stay neutral. We might see a slow decline, but we are not going to see an increase. Remember, there's never been any one rod and reel fishery that has ever caused a fish to go extinct. I want people to understand that. And that's something that is there. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate now. There might be some of you that say, oh, well, I see some people catching too many sturgeon. I see some captains catching too many sturgeon. I see some boat anglers catching too many sturgeon. I see too many charter boats catching too many sturgeon. So I want to be clear on this. The optics is something different than what science and regulations are. The regulations allow each individual to tag up to 3 sturgeon per year. They sold 45,000 tags, okay? Times 3 tags, that's 135,000 tags to go catch the 33,000 that they believe are there. So they sell 5 times, 500% currently today, and every year prior, they sell 500% more tags than there are fish. Okay, so 500% more tags than there are even fish, okay, let alone now, all of a sudden, we're going to go to a lottery system, 4% exploitation, 1,300 fish can get killed, and only 1,300 tags are going to get sold. So that's assuming that every single angler that draws a tag, whether they're a first-time angler or whether they've never fished for sturgeon before or they're an expert sturgeon angler, that they are, assuming that they are going to catch and kill that tagged fish. And so there are many other fisheries that are managed differently. And so what we suggested and what we are going to start reaching out for support on is a call to action, which you're going to see coming up here soon in the next week or two. We currently have a call to action out right now to email the Director of Fish and Wildlife and CDFW on fall run salmon because our salmon are collapsed. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we are going to do a call to action on sturgeon. And call to action on sturgeon will be specifically on sturgeon to manage them differently than a lottery system. We believe that there is a correct way to manage the species and still meet the scientific goals, even though the data doesn't 100% support it, but the 4% exploitation rate, we can manage by selling tags, just like deer tags, just like bear tags. Bear tags is a better example. We sold 31,000 bear tags this year and last year. We average around 30,000 bear tags, yet we're only allowed to kill, upwards of 1,200 to 2,000 bears. And when you harvest a bear, you're required by law within 24 hours to report that. And therefore, you now have real-time data. So now you know how many bears have been harvested in California. If you go to wildlife.ca.gov right now, go to hunting, go to bears, it will pop the number. I think it's 808, and maybe a few have been harvested today. But it's right around that low 800s number, right? Have been reported. And so once we get to the target number of the quota, then we know to close the hunting season. There's no more bears, wherever that number might fall, right? Well, why can't the same thing be done for sturgeon? Well, the answer is that it can, and it easily can, and scientifically that can easily be supported. But the department doesn't want to because it's too much work for them, and they don't have the manpower. And I told them, I'm tired of hearing this. Every year on a different fishery, I don't have staff. I don't have manpower. We don't have enough people to monitor. But every year, 5 or 6 more biologists get hired, and the department keeps growing. And the anglers keep declining. So, our license sales only make up of 20 to 25% of their revenue budget anymore. Their budget's coming from grant monies and all this other funding. 75% of their money comes from other sources. And actually, if you want me to be completely direct and blunt, a lot of those sources come from grants or grant funding from climate change, drought, global warming, and also for grant money because of fish that are endangered, listed, or species of special concern. And so therefore you start seeing the government grow, more biologists, and shutting down fisheries because, we can't do this, we can't do that because we need to study it more. We need to study it. And, I even asked yesterday on the meeting, where is all the sturgeon report card money going? Well, it all just goes into the general fund. It doesn't even go towards sturgeon. And I said, I would like to see that. And actually some other people said the same thing, that they agreed with me on that. Even people that I disagree with the whole narrative of sturgeon, they actually said they agreed with me that that money should go towards it. And I recommended that all of that money should go towards two things. One, tagging and monitoring sturgeon so that we can get an accurate population estimate, because we believe the population's higher than what they say. And number two is that money needs to go towards a hatchery to start rebounding the sturgeon population, to mitigate for the losses of the failed water policies over the last 2 decades, if not more. And that money needs to go into a new sturgeon hatchery so that we can start producing more fish. In the years that we don't have cohorts replaced, we need to add more juvenile sturgeon into the population so that we can start rebuilding this. And so that's what the department said. We recommended that we go towards more of like a bear model. We didn't give them a number of tags to sell, but maybe that number is 10,000, tags that you sell. Maybe that number is 20,000. I don't know what that number is yet. We're going to determine that, write it up, and send it to the department. The department kept saying that, oh, we've never heard you talk like this and say this, but I have. I've been the most active in the group of throwing out ideas, recommending things, throwing out all sorts of things, not because I believe it, not because I'm trying to push a narrative. I've thrown all these ideas out there because these are ideas that I've heard from you, I've heard from guides, I've heard from charter boats, I've heard from kids, I've heard from old anglers that have fished for them for 60, 70 years, bait shops, tackle shops, marinas. I have been throwing everything onto the table so that we can make sure that we are being transparent and that everything is there so that we can evaluate everything. The problem is the department doesn't want to do that. The 3 or 4 sturgeon scientists are basically, we're going to do what we do. We're the government and you're going to like it. And they're mad. Perfectly honest. I mean, they're mad because they tried to shut down the whole entire fishery, and the community rose up against them and showed up at the Fish and Game Commission, and the commissioners agreed with us. And frankly, I know that the commissioners are tired of shutting down fisheries. The commissioners, the Fish and Game Commission, is supposed to work for you. They're tired of closing down fisheries. They're closing down fisheries all over, all up and down the coast. Just shutting it down, shutting it down, shutting it down. In name of climate change? Really? Or is it in name of poor management? Where's the accountability? Throw me a thumbs up if you want to see CDFW, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, held accountable. That's what I want to know. Do you want to see them held accountable? Because I do. Because I'm tired of them ruining everything that I love and that my kids love, and that hopefully one day my grandkids are able to go fishing for some of these species. That's what I'm frustrated at. That's what I don't like, is the fact that people are trying to push a narrative on us as anglers, whether or not you agree or disagree with maybe 1 or 2 things. We're not going to agree on everything. I'm not saying that we're all going to agree on everything. Believe me, we're going to disagree on many different things, folks, and that's okay. The California that I grew up in, we were able to have civil disagreements. We were able to have discourse, a debate, and then go out afterwards and shake each other's hand and have a coffee or a beer. But now, today, God forbid, if you have a difference in opinion, censor him, shut him down, ban him off the Facebook pages. We cannot have any of that. We cannot have anyone saying anything outside of the narrative. We need to make sure that we are going to just shut all these fisheries down, because that's the only thing that CDFW can do. They can't go advocate for water, even though the next building next door, or the floor next door in the old resources building, was DWR. They can't go advocate for water. They are only responsible for shutting down fisheries. That's what they do. They don't open them up. They just close them down, and they shut down opportunities. The only thing that I've seen expanded in hunting and fishing in my 43 years is elk tags have gone up. But that's mainly due to private entities allowing elk to be on their properties, and Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and others. And CDFW has done a good job on that topic on elk, and I will give them full credit on that. But when it comes to all other fisheries, everything's declining. and then we just blame it on climate change. And it's like, well, what about the fact that you allowed the water agencies to drain reservoirs, with not leaving any water for the future? What about not planning for a rainy day? I mean, that's the first rule that you're taught as a kid, as an adolescent, is that save your money for a rainy day, kids. Don't go spend it all in one place. It's the first thing your grandpa or your dad or your mom teaches you. And it's that way so that you save water, so that if you have a bad year, you have water, right? Same thing goes with fisheries. We save fish to make sure that we have fish for sustainability over a long term. But that's not the narrative that's being pushed right now. So they're coming after us with a lottery-based system for 2025, and the department doesn't want to hear anything that I have to say, really. They basically shut me down like 3 or 4 times last night. And it just gets frustrating. It gets old. And if, the reason I'm doing this video today is because I got 72 of you. We got up to 85, but this video will be seen a few thousand times, and I need all of you to share this post, but mainly not this post. I need you to share the call to action once it comes out on this page. It's going to be a call to action with an email. I already know the email, sturgeon@wildlife.ca.gov, sturgeon@wildlife.ca.gov. And you can start emailing that now and saying, I do not agree with a lottery system. I would rather see the sturgeon managed on a different system. We recommended it managed more like an IFQ, like an individual fishing quota, like halibut. Pacific halibut are managed on a pounds. And I think it was 31,000 pounds. And when we hit the 31,000 pounds, guess what? Halibut season's closed, right? So we can manage it that way easily and allow more access. We can allow more opportunity. We can allow more of you to go out there and have a chance to harvest a sturgeon, or we can just do the lottery system. Now, those of you that know, me, I've been putting in for elk, antelope, and ram and sheep my whole life. No draws. At all. So how 45,000 people that sturgeon fish, and there's 1,000 tags. Just simple math. You're going to get drawn 1 out of every 40 years to harvest one sturgeon. 1 out of every 40 years. That's just simple math. Maybe it will equate to less because I think a lot of people are going to stop sturgeon fishing. The CDFW sturgeon survey said that 43% of the people will stop fishing if the regulations got changed, altered, and moved to catch and release only. So if they don't draw a tag, they're not going to fish. Well, that would be 16,000, 17,000 people. So now you're looking at 28 to 30,000 people that will still actively, possibly sturgeon fish after 1,000 or 1,300 tags. So now you're looking at, a 25 years on average, according to simple math. It'll take 1 out of every 25 years in order to draw a sturgeon tag. And that's just straight math. That's not, exactly what it will take, because 50% of the draw would be random. So 600 tags would randomly be distributed, and then the other 600 according to preference points. But the preference points tags, are going to take a while to get all the way through. There'll be a grip of people that have lots of preference points for sturgeon and wouldn't be able to actually draw. So I think that there's a better way to manage it. And, if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. Again, I'm not going to tell you how you have to do it. I'm just telling you what I think is best for everyone, not just certain individuals. You can email sturgeon@wildlife.ca.gov, but wait for the call to action. It'll come out later this week, and it's going to be shared far and wide, and we are going to blitz everyone for 2 months and tell the department that you want them to manage it a different way. And I think that there's a different way to manage it while still being species cognizant of supporting the species, not recommending on killing extra fish. So any of you are out there, he's recommending killing all these extra fish. No, I'm not. It's the same amount of fish that would be harvested through a lottery system. They're saying 1,300 tags. So that's the 1,300 fish that are allowed to be harvested. I'm not disputing that at this point, even though their science is bogus and it's got holes in it all over the place. I mean, there's holes in the science all over the place. I mean, some people have done some really good work trying to analyze the data that we have, the data sets from 2005 to 16. But there's so many holes and so many pieces of missing information in the science that lawsuits could just bust right through all of it. Now, the negative is that this whole thing with sturgeon that has been started because of the individual that came to the WRC in January and requested this topic be discussed. You can go back, don't take my word for it, go back and watch it. Go to Fish and Game Commission, fgc.ca.gov, and scroll down to past meetings, Wildlife Resources Committee, January 2023. Go to Agenda 11B at the end of the meeting, and you can see the individual that says it. I don't have to say their name, but that individual is the one that brought all this on top of us. And it frustrates me because that individual could have met with people offline that understood regulatory process and policy process and could have then said, hey, we understand this a lot better and we could go at it this way or we could go at it this way. What are your objectives? Why are you trying to do this? But now we are in the position that basically they threw mud on the wall and trying to see if it stuck. It didn't stick. And now we have environmental groups that might be out there and they're going to possibly file an ESA listing, Endangered Species Act. You could do it federally or they could do it statewide. But the department told us that if they got a listing for sturgeon, that they're going to ban sturgeon fishing completely. Like no sturgeon fishing. So, to the individual that caused all this all year, great job, bud. You might have just caused us all to stop sturgeon fishing permanently if one of these crazy environmental groups just wants to list the fish. Because the department wants to go on their side. Because the department wants less to do. They're busy. They're overran. They're overworked. They're government employees. They don't want to go the extra mile. They don't want to work extra hard. They don't work Saturdays and Sundays. They don't do what we do to try to survive just so that we have a chance to take our family fishing. All they want to do is shut it down. So it's very, very frustrating. And it's really hard to grasp it without getting angry. But I want you all to know that that's the truth and that's what's going on. We're facing some very, very tough times. We're facing some new sturgeon regulations, the long-term regulations that will start in 2025 that are going to be challenging. They're going to say no sturgeon fishing. July and August, I think it was. May, the quota number will come out. You'll apply in June. Tags will be distributed in July and August. And the sturgeon report cards will be September 1st to August 31st. Obviously, they will be required to be turned in by June 30th because there'll be no fishing allowed in July and August for harvest. And that way they can calculate all of the tags. Seems to me that if you issue 1,300 tags and saying that every single one of them are going to harvest is just stupidity. I mean, anybody that says that, anybody that's ever sturgeon fished knows. I mean, I was just out with one of the top captains out there last week, and we went out there and caught 4 sturgeon in our short 6 hours that we were out there, and we got a slot fish that we let go, and we had 2 unders and an over, a big over, and I think that for the people that think that you just go out there every single time and just kill fish, I don't think that they understand sturgeon fishing. And I understand that technology is better. I understand that graphs are better. I understand that there's certain baits that are out there that are being used that give us advantages at times. But it's still very hard to always ensure and guarantee that you're going to harvest sturgeon. Some days are better than others. And, some areas are better than others in certain geographical times. But the fact is that if you only issue 1,300 tags and you say that we're allowed to kill 1,300 fish or harvest 1,300 fish, but you're not willing to open the access and opportunity to more anglers, you're going to lose precipitation. I can't even talk right now. I can't even talk. I'm saying precipitation instead of participation. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Anyway, so you're going to lose participation, and you're going to have people exit the fishery. You're going to have less people buying cards, less people buying licenses, which is completely against the own department's narrative of the R3 of recruit, retain, reactivate, trying to get more people buying licenses. And so it's very, very frustrating. So I'm going to go and read some of these questions real quick, like I always do, and hopefully answer a few questions for you guys. And then I'm going to cover salmon real quick. I got a few updates on the main stem and a few things that we're doing right now for the call to action right now. So let's go back. So what's going on? Do I know when the new regulations are coming into effect? So yes, David, thank you. Emergency regulations are currently at the Office of Administrative Law. I have not seen them yet, but it's going to be any day. So you might get another week. You could get all the way to Thanksgiving theoretically, but it's as soon as they post it, it will go into effect the next day. Watch the page. We will post it immediately. We will announce it on this page. But as of right now, you're still going under the old rules, 40 to 60 inch slot, up to 3 tags per year, 1 fish per day right now. So we were able to get that extended a little bit longer than what we thought. We thought that that was all going to go into effect before November. But because of the regulatory process, the department had a lot of work to do, and the Office of Administrative Law is really backed up because we form so many laws in California. We just keep writing more and more and more and more laws every single day. There's new laws that are going on the books every single day to just tell Californians what they can't do anymore. And I will tell you that those rules will be in effect no later than the end of the month. But I would anticipate seeing them probably possibly by Friday, possibly next week. So you are available to continue harvesting to the 40 to 60 inch slot right now on your old tags. Michael Hale, isn't the upper river closed because it's spawning area? Good question. So shouldn't the spawning area for a fish that spawns so infrequently be protected? So great question, Michael. So they say that the females are spawning every 2 to 5 years and the males are spawning every 2 to 3 years. And so the infrequency of the spawning is something that I really would like to get more into that science, right? I'm like, okay, so how do we know that? Do we have any proof of that? There's like 1 or 2 studies that basically just say that sturgeon do that. But we don't have any like data that shows us that a fish got tagged and then it stays down in the South Bay for 2 full years and then it comes back up and spawned in the same area that it did 2 years prior, or that it doesn't spawn until every 5 years, or that green sturgeons swim out and they go to other watersheds and then they come back. We don't have data on that is specific to that, but that's what the scientists say, is that they spawn infrequently. So in 2006, when the green sturgeon was ESA listed, they declared the sturgeon spawning grounds to be above Butte City, Highway 162 bridge, and they closed all sturgeon fishing in the spawning grounds forever. And they banned lamprey eel bait above that area. You couldn't use it for any other species. And that was because lamprey eel was the number 1 bait back then being used to target sturgeon. So they banned all of that, and that was considered the spawning grounds. Now they're saying that Butte City to Sacramento, including all the Feather River and all the American River and all the Yuba River, are all now spawning grounds, and therefore we're going to close all of that down all the way. And they told me yesterday, you're lucky, James, because originally we were thinking that we would close it from Rio Vista north, but we gave you guys something by saying it was Highway 50 bridge. And I'm like, really? You gave us something? Thank you. It's like they want us to be grateful that they just didn't shut it down even more. And it's like, to me, it's just a joke because, I question whether any of these people really fish, I mean, I'm sure they've been fishing, but whether or not they fish, like most of us, that we are actually anglers, that's what we do. It's who we are. If we aren't working, we're fishing every day, every weekday, every weekend that we possibly can. And that's the difference. I will tell you that the Department of Fish and Wildlife is not the same that it was. It's completely different. It's been completely infiltrated by environmentalists that have been studying at 3 main colleges. You can probably guess what those 3 colleges are, and they have the largest biology backgrounds. And the indoctrination from those professors towards those students have basically brought students into the department that are basically, I would just say maybe, marinated they've been marinated just like you marinate a steak. They've been marinated in the ideology that, fishing's bad and that we're the enemy, and at least that's how it feels. And there's a lot of them that, I don't even think they fish or hunt, but they might say they do. But in the old days, you would actually have department heads that you knew that fish and hunt because they were going out of state hunting. They were going fishing, or they would come fishing with you, or they would hire a guide, or they would, you would see them on the water. That's how the old days used to be. But now it seems that the fisheries department, at least, is being infiltrated by a bunch of people that are not as seasoned in angling and fishing as they used to be. So that's the sad thing, and I think it's going to get worse. But to answer your question, finally, Michael, should we protect fish in spawning areas? Well, if you think that we should protect fish in spawning areas, that means there'd be no salmon fishing in the rivers. There would be, which there already is in the upper ends. They've already banned all that, but that would mean that you would close the entire river system down. There'd be no steelhead fishing in the rivers, in any river. There would be no striper fishing in any river. There'd be no shad fishing in any river. And there would be no sturgeon fishing in any river. So I think that, do the fish need protection? No, I don't think they need protection. Do the fish need regulation to protect the fish? Sure. I think that would be the way to correctly answer your question. And how did we do that? Well, we did do that by mandatory barbless hooks, right? So that we didn't harm fish when we were fishing for them and catch and release. I think that's one of the things that helped during regulation. And I think that there are other strategies and things that we can do that could help protect the fish, but are not going to harm the fish. The main thing is that, like I said earlier in this video, is that the species is not going to come back because you ban fishing in the rivers. It's not going to come back because you have regulations. The slot limit's probably going to shrink for 2025 too. But if we're shrinking the slot limit, or we had a sliding slot limit that moved around to protect the species, I think that that's what you can do for management to protect the species. Because if a fish is bigger, you're telling me that if I'm in Rio Vista, I can go and target sturgeon all day long, or I can in Walnut Grove all day long, according to this, but I can't do it in Verona. I just think that that's just completely discriminatory. It's just discrimination on a geographic area because they're trying to shut it down. Personally, now this is just me personally, I think it's because they have a really bad poaching problem, because that area of the river is one of the most accessible by bank. And I know that a lot of poaching goes on there. And rather than law enforcement handling that problem, which is their issue, they just shut it down, just close it all down. That way, if we see somebody on the bank, we'll just write them a ticket. But what good does that do? Because we allow people just to run into stores and just steal stuff, and we let them go. We don't even arrest them. But, all of a sudden now we have a conscience, and we're going to go after people for fishing for sturgeon, illegally poaching. I hope they do. I am not a fan of poaching. I'm not a fan of poachers, and you should call 1-888-CAL-TIP and turn them in. But this is not a regulatory issue. That's a law enforcement issue. So I'll stop there, and we'll keep going, have more dialogue about it later, Michael, and we can talk offline too. Robert, I will be removing myself from the page. Yeah, I would too. I hope everyone removes himself from the page. They're just, in my opinion, they're a bunch of liars to us, and they are telling everyone that they represent you. They're telling the whole department, we represent 15,000 people. I have 15,000 people on my page, and they all agree with me, and I've polled them all, and they've all, and it's such a lie. It's just lies coming out of that guy's mouth. And it's just sad that's where we're at nowadays, is that we just lie, and we lie to the government so that it pushes a narrative. And, that page is fake. So anyway, James, we appreciate what you do. Thanks for standing up for us. Yeah, you're very welcome. Appreciate that, Robert. I'm always here for you guys. I mean, that's what I was hired to do. A lot of you that maybe don't know me, I was a recreational angler, grew up in Concord, Martinez, fishing sturgeon striper, moved to Sacramento, went to school there, and then I lived in Yuba City and Sutter area for 17 years and guided up in the upper rivers for many years. So I've seen all different sides of it. I've been a recreational angler. I've been a part-time guide. I've been a full-time guide. So I know what it's like being in all of those positions. And so I can put myself in the shoes of those individuals. And so it gives me a better macro view, if you will, down from space, and being able to analyze how it feels when regulations change as a guide, as a part-time guide, and as a recreational angler. It doesn't feel good to any of us, but at least we can voice opinions based on personal experiences and based on what we hear and what I hear from all of you. And that's what I've brought to the committee. I have just flooded them with stuff, just total stuff. Some stuff I don't agree with, but I flooded it with them so that I threw it all on the table, because that's what good leadership should do. You throw everything on the table, then you start organizing it all, and then you follow the science, and then you set regulations. That's not what we're doing. This committee has basically been a waste of time in a lot of ways, which is sad, because the department should have been listening a lot longer ago. They said that I haven't recommended any other changes besides a lottery system. And I said, well, the last 3 meetings I've been saying, come up with a different way. And then last night, I was told, well, you need to do it for us. So I got to do the government's work now. Again, here we go. It's now the job of a nonprofit to do the job of the California department, because we don't have time to look at another option. We are too busy. We don't want to go above and beyond. And this is the way that we want to manage, because it's easy and simple and doesn't require much effort. That's the truth. So I want them to do stuff better. So please do read the study. Let us know the conclusion. Yeah, Michael, I will. I'll be sharing that. We'll be posting it to our page. We'll be sharing it on social too. That's like saying catch any fish, spawning for bass, salmon will not spawn. Yeah, exactly. They go right back to the bed. Right. I'm with you there, Isaiah West. Thank you for that comment. And I hear you. Thanks, Sal. I appreciate that. Isaiah, it's a rigged system, just like the elk tags. You'll never see one. Yeah, I've never seen one. I've got, tons of points, but I just think that it's a very frustrating deal. Blake Goss, if they're going to do a quota, then like bear tags, sell unlimited tags, 1 per person, retention stops on the quota mat. Exactly, Blake. That's what I said last night. The same thing. I'm trying to like your comment, but I don't think I can. But that's exactly what I suggested last night and the week before, is that, we can sell more tags. We just stop when we hit the tag. Now, the one argument I will say, Blake, is a couple of people said, well, that's not fair, because then all the captains are going to go out there and they're going to harvest all the fish in March, and then the season might end in April, and then we have no other fishery the rest of the year. So I said, that's a great point. So to make it fair, actually, James Smith came up with it, to give all credit where credit's due. James Smith said from Caldon, let's do like a quarterly system. And I was like, I love it. So we do a quarterly system. So every 3 months, there is a quarter. So if you had 1,300 tags, you would divide it up, into 350, 350, 350, 350. And so every 3 months, there would be like 350 tags. And once the 350 tags are hit in the quarter, then you stop harvest for that quarter. And then the next quarter, 350 more tags open up, and the next quarter, and the next quarter, or something like that. And that's not final. I just gave that as an example of that's something that you could do to provide equity, which is the department's number 1 word this day, equity. We've got to be fair to all, but here we aren't. We're shutting down the rivers. Got to shut down that area that had the least amount of harvest. We're going to shut it down. Just really irritates me, because that's just, it's not equitable. And that's everything the department pushes right now. They're pushing DEI, diversity, inclusion and equity, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're pushing JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. They have meetings every week about how they need to be fair to everyone, no matter where your background is, no matter what your skin color is, no matter what language you speak, no matter what species you like to fish for. And they say that that's how we have to be in California and the department. I'm not talking about California politics. I'm talking about CDFW and fish and game politics. That's what they're pushing. But then when it comes to, certain communities, it's like, oh, no, you're out. And we asked, what about the other communities? There's a lot of communities that fish for sturgeon, right? Not just one community, not just one demographic, not just one ethnic background. And I think that it's hogwash that they are not listening to all the different backgrounds of groups that like to fish sturgeon. So Blake, you're on it. That's what we want you all to send on the call to action when it comes out this week, is there are different ways to skin a cat, if you will. Damien, facts. The water is the issue and the state's in control's at fault. Yes, Damien. Till we get water back, control. It's mainly the water going south of the Delta. That's the number one issue. Water going south of the Delta. If it goes south of the Delta, species decline fast. And they're going to continue. And what's going to end up happening is the environmental groups will end up listing all these species, and then we're not going to be able to fish for any of them anymore. And then they're going to just raise some hatchery fish and let them go in the ocean, so they say we have ocean salmon. There'll be no fishing inland anymore. 2030, somebody put on the agenda. Yeah, that's it. And they're going to shut us all down, and then all the fish are going to be ESA listed so that the environmental groups get control of the water. So that's what this is. This is politics. And the only way the department knows to control us is to shut down the fishery. And the only way the environmental group can get control of the water is by listing the species that they lives in that water, and therefore they gain control over the delivery of that water. That's what's happening. Once the spring run gets uplisted next year, somebody might list the fall run salmon because of this collapse and the sturgeon. Watch out. The water's going to be under full control of the environmental groups. Will it benefit fisheries? Will it benefit the species? Doubtful. Michael Hale, but when there's good water for them to spawn, shouldn't we give them a fair chance to spawn instead of harassing them? Yes, I agree with you, Michael. I'm not saying that we should have a full out, all out, season in the spawning grounds or in the migratory corridor. The spawning grounds have been closed, like I said, since 2006, above Butte City. Always been closed. Not advocating to reopen that. What I'm trying to advocate is for Sacramento, American River, Feather River, and up to Colusa to remain open with some form of opportunity. I'm not saying wide open seasons, but I'm saying you need to have equity. You need to have some fairness. They only harvested 6% on average. On average, there's only 50 to 120 sturgeon harvested there every single year. 50 to 120, whereas there's 2,000 harvested in the deltas and bays. So you can't tell me that those 50 fish are causing the decline of sturgeon, right? Because there's not that many people that go up there to fish for them, and they're more difficult to catch in certain areas of the river than others. So I'm not recommending harass them, but I am saying that there needs to be some opportunity to fish, right? Right now they're saying closure, like you can't even catch and release. So we'll have more discussions on that. Chris Brown, catch and release fishing is illegal in California. We are not allowed to target, catch, and release steelhead. All wild rivers have a 2-fish hatchery limit, and there's no hatchery. Therefore, DFW has proposed an illegal law. Yeah, Chris. Robert, did the department take into consideration the study that the 5 guides did involuntarily? So actually it was a lot more, and we have the most current data ourselves. The current guides, the organization paid for an app called Flame, Fisherman-Led Assessment Monitoring Experiment, and we've been collecting data on sturgeon since the beginning of the year. And we have the most current and correct data that is out there today. The department has reviewed some of the data that I have not sent them, but I presented it all to them, and they were just astonished with, wow, well, how do we get that data? How do we get it? We want it. We want to look at it. Well, I bet you do. Because it's the most current and the most real-time data we have on sturgeon here today. And it was collected by the captains and the guides that the department doesn't like the optics of the way that they've been catching fish, even though they've been following the law according to how they set the law. which, is to me is the definition of a hypocrite. So you want to change something, then change the law, and now that's what they're doing. So the steelhead data hasn't even been looked at. You're right, Damien. I sit on the steelhead committee. There's over $1 million in that account appropriated through legislation, through the steelhead report card. We haven't looked at that data in 7 years. I've been on the committee for 2 years. We haven't even looked at the data. We don't have a person that can analyze that data. We don't have a biologist that can read all those report cards and see what's happening to everything. So how do you make people want to fill out cards? That's why we have such a low return rate. It's because we know they're not doing anything with the data, just like the guide logs. A lot of guides stopped sending in guide logs. Why? Because they never used the data. They never used it, ever. They just sat in a room. And so that's how, unfortunately, when the department creates laws and regulations and therefore doesn't follow up on those laws and regulations and utilize the data from those laws and regulations, that people get frustrated. Sounds more like a 2030 agenda. Yeah, you're doing an awesome job. Thanks. A lot of thumbs ups there. I'm sure that was from my comment that I asked you. So thank you. Class action lawsuit. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where we're at. I mean, it's going to come down to that. I mean, we're approaching that there's no other way. I've been fighting, trying to work side by side, sit on every committee, trying to do everything I can legally and honestly and respectfully through the department for the last 7 years. But I mean, they are getting to the point to where they're just going to keep shutting down fisheries over and over and over. Frustrating. A lot of people are leaving the state. A lot of people are stopped fishing. A lot of people saying it ain't worth it anymore. I mean, just to get your tags and your second rod stamp, you're at $100 now just to go fishing for 3 species, for steelhead, salmon, sturgeon, second report card, and your license, you're at $100 for the year. So a lot of people are, getting tired of it, and it's sad. So hopefully we retain enough of us to keep fighting. How many of those lottery tags won't even be fished? Yeah, great point, David. That's exactly what James Smith said last night. So you can only fish if you have a tag. No, that's not correct, Kevin. Jaime, I hope you're doing well. Everybody will be able to catch and release all year long. You'll have to buy the sturgeon report card for $10, and then you can catch and release. And you have to, required by the new regulation, you're going to have to fill out every day you go fishing, whether you catch one or not, how many hours, how many rods, and then you're going to have to record every fish you catch and release. That's going to be the way that it's going to be. And then in 2025, they will start the lottery, whereas if you get a lottery tag, then you can go harvest one. It will be a separate tag separately from your sturgeon report card. Everyone will be required to have a sturgeon report card if you try to angle for sturgeon to document catch and release. Yeah, Rod, thank you. If you catch all your slots and you still fish, catch and release, are you done? So the way that we understand it right now, JR, good question. The way that we understand it right now is the way that it currently is in regulation, which a lot of people do not follow the rules. But right now, if you catch 2 striped bass over 18 inches, you're done fishing for the day for striped bass. You cannot legally still catch and release. You're done. Same will go for sturgeon. So if you tag a sturgeon and you catch a sturgeon in the new regulations when there's only 1 per year and you tag your fish and kill it, you're done fishing for that day. But then the next day you can go back to catch and release only for the balance of the year. So you can still catch and release the rest of the year. How about all the sea lions? We've brought all that up, James. Great comment. The department says we have no data, we have no monitoring, we have no scientists, we can't evaluate it. Sturgeon's delicious. Yeah, to some people it is. Very much so, Chris. A lot of people like it smoked. A lot of people like it fried. We've been harvesting sturgeon for a long, long time in California, hundreds of years. It used to be a commercial fishery too. And now here we are fighting for just crumbs. Sal, I've been watching the fishing decline for 65 years, and I fished for sturgeon in the South Bay, caught and released fish 10 foot and longer, caught some salmon over 45 pounds. It's gotten worse throughout the years. I truly believe it's the water. I watched it go from good to bad. On occasions, slew a striper, 25-pound.com. Thanks for you to do. I support you 100%. Thank you, Sal. I appreciate those comments. And you're right. I mean, everything's gone downhill. John Wheeler, how are they going to regulate the fact that most of the same bait used for striper is also on sturgeon? Yeah, they're not. That's going to be a great area. That's going to be up to law enforcement. So that's going to be a law enforcement question. Blake, if they close the river to protect them while spawning, we're going to shut down bass tournaments during the spring. Where does it stop? Exactly, right? That's what I said. So we're all fishing our striped bass derby in April, and sturgeon are always caught. So it's like, okay, it's closed in the river. So, what happens if, somebody hooks into a sturgeon and they're caught fighting a sturgeon thinking it's a bass before they even see it? They don't have intent. They're not intending to target sturgeon, but if they catch one, are they, going to be cited? It's going to be interesting. Isn't it the 12 guides doing the study? Yes. Isaiah West, yes. There's 12 to 15 guides that are working on the study with me on Flame and our scientists from Cal Poly Humboldt. They should prorate credit license fees purchased before the emergency closures. Yeah, Brian, that's a good comment. That is the last comment, and I'll keep going into salmon now. But sturgeon's going to be interesting, everyone. Sorry, I keep squinting. It's really bright outside today. I just wanted to come to you with that, let you know that there are some false narratives and basic just outright lies being told. And, I'm tired of it. I'm just absolutely tired of it. And I called them out last night to their face too. So, I told them straight to their face that they're wrong and that's not right. And I disagree. And, I think that our job as stewards of the resource is always following the data and the science, the current science, but always making sure that we are protecting the right to angle, protecting the right to hunt and fish and access the resource. These are publicly trusted resources that we trust in the doctrine of our government to manage them correctly so that they're around for many years. And if you ask them, that's their answer. Shut it down. Limit your harvest. They know that if they only do a lottery system and let 1,300 tags go, they know you're only going to harvest 600, 700, 800 fish. It's only going to be a 2-3% exploitation rate. They know that. That's why they want to do it that way, is because they say on paper that the sturgeon could actually take up to a 5% exploitation rate, according to the Blackburn study and some other documentation, that anything over 5% could be harmful to the species. Could be harmful. And a lot of these papers all say, assuming, allegedly, making the guesstimate, it's always guesstimates until somebody proves it wrong. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this all goes. But they are going to have to wrap up a final package that gets delivered at the January Wildlife Resources Committee meeting. So that will be in January. You'll be able to attend via public. You'll be able to attend via Zoom or in person. And that will be your first opportunity to tell the commissioners whether you agree or disagree with that lottery system. And if the vast majority disagree with the lottery system, which I believe they will, just because it limits the amount of people that can ever go harvest a fish, and it limits how often you'll even be able to go get a tag. I think that it's a lot better to have, multiple tags out there and then regulate the harvest to protect the species and make sure we don't go over that 4%, 1,320 fish in 2025, and manage it like the bear population, or manage it like the Pacific halibut, manage it like one of these other fisheries or these other wildlife regulatory bodies that have no problem regulating those fisheries. I mean, I think it would be really easy if you said, okay, we're going to sell sturgeon tags. You can buy a sturgeon tag. If you want to charge extra for it, then you can. But right now it should be included with your 1024 report card. And you have your one tag on the report card starting in 2025. And as you use it, then it will be documented. Maybe a rule that says you have to report it within 24 hours, or you have to report the harvest within 48 hours, or something like that of that measure, so that when we get down to, 1,300 fish, we know the season's closed and we're done. Or split it up geographically, I said. split the 1,300 tags. I'm just going to make numbers up right now, so don't take these numbers. I'm just making them up right now off the top of my head. But say we had 1,300 tags, and you say, okay, I want 100 tags for the river, right? I want 500 tags for the Delta, and I want 500 tags for the bays, and then I want 150 tags for the South Bay, and then I want 100 tags for San Pablo Bay. Something like that, right? That's just giving you a wild guesstimate. I mean, we could geographically split the tags up too, according to code, so that as those fish are harvested geographically, then that area would close, right? And so that could be an option. I threw that out there 2 weeks ago. It fell on deaf ears. We could do it quarterly, like I said, or James Smith recommended we could go quarterly, where you have 300, 350 fish every quarter. And so every single quarter, 350 fish are allowed to be harvested. You could do it monthly if you wanted to, and say 120 fish a month. That's 4 fish a day. So we watch the numbers. You have to report. As soon as 100 fish or 120 fish are harvested that month, the balance of the month, no harvest. You start over again. The department says that's too hard to regulate. The department said that it's too complicated. It's, again, it's too much work, right? They don't like work. They don't like change. They don't like doing anything that makes them work hard. It's, very frustrating. So maybe they should start managing flies and mosquitoes, and we don't have any of those either. Yeah, Clint, that's funny you said that. I actually put that on my personal Facebook about 6 months ago. Said, good news, California. CDFW is now monitoring mosquitoes. They should be extinct by 2027. Yeah, pretty much everything that our government has their hands in, it's a mess in the state of California. And everything that's managed by the private sector is doing rather well in California, for the most part. Resources are very important, and I do not want to diminish that resources are important. Water, fish, animals, very important. And if they're hurting and the science shows it, we need to protect them. We need to make sure that we're doing that. I think that hunters and fishermen we are the number one conservationists that are out there. But the difference is that there's a difference between conservation and preservation. And the 2030 agenda is preservation. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to preserve to have just a couple of fish left. They're not trying to rebound. They're not trying to recover. They're not trying to conserve. They're not trying to say, okay, we should do this, we should do that, right? Let's jump into salmon. Perfect example, right? Salmon this year. There's 165,000 fish out in the ocean. That's what they told us. Okay. As soon as we open the season, the model takes 122,000 fish for spawning in Sacramento, plus 18,000, 14% for inland harvest. That's 140,000 fish right off the top of the model. And that tells you how many fish you can harvest, which is 25,000. And the department said, you're opening a salmon season this year, and you can harvest 25,000 fish. We, as the industry, said, no, that's wrong. And for the first time ever, we advocated to close a fishery. Never advocated to close a fishery in my life. We knew it was wrong this year. So we advocated to close it. We knew their numbers were off. We knew that the 10-year average showed that their numbers were off on average 31%. 31% off of 165,000 is 117. Remember, the minimum's 122, right? Just to get home. We knew that it was off. We knew even when we closed down the season, we probably wouldn't make escapement, which is just terrible, right? Now all the numbers are coming back, and there's less than 7,000 fish in the entire main stem of the Sacramento River. 5,200 fish came back to Coleman, the second lowest number in the history of Coleman National Fish Hatchery. I argue and say it's the worst number that's ever came back to Coleman because we didn't fish this year. There was no harvest in the ocean. There was no harvest in the rivers, right? The total numbers inland are only like 109 reds, 116 carcasses found in the Sacramento River fall run. 116 fish. Supposed to be minimum 50 to 100,000 in the river. We're talking less than 200 fish are in the river. We're talking less than 6,000 fish are in the entire system. No fish in Clear Creek, Deer Creek, Mill Creek, Battle Creek, up above the hatchery. No fish in Cow Creek. No fish anywhere in the system, right? It's the worst return ever. It's a full collapse in the Sacramento River. Now the Feather River, different, largest tributary off. It did very well. It got a lot of fish back of Feather River origin, and, upwards of the guess of 30,000 fish are there and spawning, and, 12,000, I think, came back to the hatcheries roughly. And there's, a couple 10,000, 20,000 fish that are spawning at, Feather River hatchery, which is good. But remember, the Sac, Feather, and American are managed together on the 122. So those three rivers have to together be 122,000 to have healthy fisheries according to the fisheries management plan at the council, at PFMC, which is comprised of your federal government and your state governments. So moving forward down to the American, there's upwards of about 20,000 fish estimated to be down there as well. And so what does that all conclude? Well, when you add 40 plus 20, let's say there's 30 that come back to the American, because there could be a lot of strays from the McCollum that come back and stray into the American, which happens every year. We're looking at, 77, 85,000 fish total amongst the entire Sacramento system. That's with 10, 15,000 strays from the McCollum. We're looking at maybe hitting 90,000 fish, maybe, on a closed fishery. The model said 165,000, and they wanted us to open the season to go kill 25,000 of them. 25,000 fish in the ocean would have been 3-day season. We were going to open up July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and we were going to open 3 days of salmon fishing if they made us, and we were going to open the whole state 3 days. And the law enforcement division said, we can't even control that. We can't monitor that. You guys can't do that. And then we said, well, what are you asking us to do? You can only open the season 3 days. And the commercial fleet was only going to be allowed like 4 days with trip limits. And it just wasn't financially responsible, and it wasn't species responsible. So I blend that with the sturgeon conversation, because I don't want anyone thinking for any moment that this organization or myself is ever not thinking of the species. I'm always thinking of the species. Our mission statement is to provide opportunity and access to the publicly trusted resources while still maintaining healthy populations so that our kids and grandkids have it better than we did. So that is the most important thing to me and my board of directors, is sustainability. Being able to harvest off of a population and have sustainable populations so that we're never hurting anything. I never want to advocate to hurt a species or hurt an animal population, ever. So I just want to be clear on that. And so with salmon, here we are coming to find out that we were right. And the department's going to eat crow in March. I mean, literally eat crow. It's going to be great to watch. I can't wait to see their faces, because they were yelling at us, telling us, you have to open the fishery. You have to provide opportunity. And we're like, no, there's no scientific data that supports that your numbers are accurate. And here we are, closed fishery. Not one Sacramento fish was caught. Oh, the whole fleet of Oregon was shut down. The whole California fleet was shut down. Recreational and commercial in both states, and all inland fishing for salmon. And here we are, we're not even going to get 90,000 fish. Where's the 165? So I think that gives you a little bit better clarity of how off the science is sometimes, and how off the models are sometimes, and how real-time data is more important and is more realistic moving forward into the future. And that's what we believe in. We believe in citizen science. We believe in helping our state and federal agencies. There are some good people that do work in the department that are out there that are trying to fight. Many of them call me privately off the record, and tell me what's going down. And if I told you all the stuff that I hear, it would blow your mind. Some of you maybe not, but we're going down really tough roads right now for hunting and fishing. If you're a hunter or you're an angler in California, we're under attack. And we've been under attack. I think a lot of you know that, but it's getting worse and worse. There is an agenda, there is a narrative amongst some individuals inside the department, and there is an agenda and narrative amongst some of the individuals that are in the general public, and one Facebook page that is really trying to shut down your opportunity to go fishing. And it's sad, but that's where it's at. And that's the reality. And I'm hoping that we rise up, because the only thing that we can do about it is to have our voices heard as well. This is a democracy. So, I will never advocate to silence their voices. I will never advocate to tell them that they can't speak. I will never ban them from our pages. They're always welcome to come speak freely as they want to, whether they lie or not. Or their reality is, maybe not accurate. But we always need to have discourse. I tell my board of directors at all times, ask questions, debate, question. That's always what you should do. If you're not asking questions, if you're not debating each other about these topics, then we can't ever have truth. We can't ever then follow science together and stand behind it and confidently feel that we're making the right decision. Confidently, the worst thing I ever had to do in my life was close salmon season and recommend that we close salmon season. And the same goes for Johnny, George, and Jimmy, the four of us that had to make that recommendation to the council to close it. And it was terrible. It was the worst decision I've ever made in my life when it comes to this job. And I'll tell you now, seeing the numbers and knowing we were right obviously makes you feel better. Like, okay, we were right. I mean, but we could have been wrong. And if we would have been wrong and we would have, seen 400,000 fish come back, I had good friends. I have good friends that have called me and yelled at me and swore at me and threatened me because of salmon, and how dare you shut it down, that's such BS, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and all of that has happened. And I sat there and took it all on the chin and then stared at him like, where have you been? How come you haven't made one meeting? How come you haven't ever attended a live video to get the information? Where have you been on all the public meetings? Crickets. It's just like voting, folks. If you're not going to vote, then don't complain about the results. Same goes here. If you are not going to participate when we call to action and we tell you to be at a commission meeting, then don't complain about the results. I'm tired of hearing it. I don't care if you're one of my good friends, because I've got some good friends that complain, and all they do is like to complain. I could use another word, 5-letter word. But that's all they do is complain. But when it's time for them to show up and fight for the resource, fight for their opportunity, they're crickets. They're not there. They don't show. There's a few, especially on this river issue and the sturgeon and the guides. Show up. You've got to show up. You've got to participate. Okay? Just having me there is not enough at all times. I can do the day-to-day for the organization and try to represent as many people as join this organization, well over 4,000 and well over 600 hunting and fishing guides in the state of California. I can do my best to represent you in the day-to-day meetings. But when we have controversy, when we have regulation change, when we have emergency changes to a species, you have to show up. You have to take the day off. You have to do everything you can in your power to be there. And if you can't, you can do other things. You can write an email. You can write a letter. You can participate via Zoom and do it virtually like this. There are so many options in today's world with technology. But don't sit there and call me and complain, because I'm going to stop taking your calls. I'm going to stop taking your texts because I'm tired of it. If you're going to text and just complain, and you're not going to participate, or you're not going to join the organization, or you're not going to attend a meeting, or you're not going to call and say, hey, how come this is happening? Just instead of, what a bunch of crap, they do this, they do that, you've got to participate, because if you don't, they're going to run over us. They're going to run over me. They're going to run over our small organization, and they're going to run over any other organization that is not aligned to the narrative. You must show up. So that's my message for the day. I'll check these comments. Gil Pence, hey buddy, I hope you're doing well. Gil, I know you from the Martinez days, back when I used to be at Canyon Sports. Anyway, Gil, according to East Bay Mud, record number salmon at the McCollum. Yes, sir, you're right. So, last thing, the McCollum is not managed the same as the Sacramento systems, but there are a lot of fish. We are going to get record runs. We might see 25, 30,000 fish come back to the McCollum because of no fishing. Most important thing, check out the call to action. It's on our website. Go to ncgasa.org. Sign up for $20 to support us. Buy a hat if you could. If not, go to the call to action at the very minimum and click the link. It's already a pre-populated email that we made for you with the letter, sending it directly to Chuck Bonham, the director of CDFW, and the director of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Paul Souza. And please go to that right now and send an email and send it to every one of your friends. Make them all send the email that says, please transfer salmon eggs from the American and McCollum hatcheries to the federal hatchery of Coleman. Coleman has missed their egg mitigation. Coleman does not have enough eggs to raise fall run salmon. They only have 10 million eggs. They said that they had a 20% mortality. They normally raise 12 million finished product, and they take 16 million green eggs. They only got 10 million. They're only going to be able to produce about 70% of what they're supposed to right now. And we have got to get that changed. We have got to make sure that we get more eggs to Coleman immediately. We've got like 8 or 9 days, call to action. So please spend the rest of the day, forward that from our website. I'll put the link in the comments. As soon as I'm done with this video, you can go back to this website to find, or this thing, go to the comments and you'll see the link in there, and it's also on our page, and you can see that, right there, for the, sending eggs from the lower hatcheries to Coleman hatchery. We've got 8 or 9 days to lobby the government to get that done. I want to tell you, I'm thinking good things on this, but we need participation. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? I just talked about. Don't call me in 2 months and say, I can't believe they didn't get eggs. I can't believe they didn't do that. What a failure. And start yelling at me like it's my fault when I'm here now saying, please send an email. I already wrote the email for you. All you got to do is just copy it and paste it in your email and send it, and saying that you support moving eggs from American River and McCollum River, fall run salmon eggs, to the Coleman hatchery so that we can start rebuilding the Sacramento. Because if we don't, we're going to lose the 2026 season, and it will be gone too. Right now, we're looking really bad for next year because of these low returns. 2024 is looking worse than this year, believe it or not, even with the full closure. And it's sad to say that, but these are the effects of 3 years prior. Right now in 2023, we're working on 2026. If we don't get this right here in the next 2 weeks, if we don't get all these eggs up there, we're going to be in major trouble and have another collapse. So please go to that. Go to ncgasa.org. Go to the Facebook page. Scroll 2 posts below this, and you'll see it. Call to action. Make sure you click that link. Make sure you send the email off. Send it to thousands of people. We need thousands of people to email this off in the next 8 to 9 days to get it to the directors to make sure they're doing what the general public wants. Provide eggs so that we can get our hatcheries back up and running and start rebuilding the salmon populations so we can get back on the water and go fishing. So there's a lot of other things out here. I'm going to leave it at that. A couple of others have questions. Feel free to message me, call me. We're going to keep battling. We're going to keep fighting. We had a great dinner last week. 500 people attended. It was fantastic. More support than ever. We are going to continually battle for all of you and make sure that our fisheries are still around for our kids and our grandkids. We're going to keep fighting. It's going to take us all. It's going to take us all united. Remember that too. You know, we've got to be united in this. we've got to make sure, even if we have disagreements on certain small policy decisions or certain areas or certain regulation changes, we have to be together and be united. If we start dividing and start fighting each other on macro levels about all different species, these fisheries are all going to disappear. They're all going to go away. We've got to get behind one common message, and that is access, and that is abundant fisheries, right? We've got to build our fisheries back up. We've got to advocate for that while still being able to access the resource. So 48 of you stayed with me the whole time. I appreciate all of you. There's a lot of new things coming down the pipe in the next couple of weeks, so be ready for all of that. I'll have more sturgeon information news. I'll do another live video after Thanksgiving on sturgeon after we have our next meeting. We do it every 2 weeks, so I'll plan on coming back to you the last week of November on sturgeon. And once we have some concrete feather and American River numbers, I'll come to you at live with those numbers too. And, we'll move into the new year. Make sure you all remember we'll be at the International Sportsman Show. We've got our new movie coming out, Unspawned 2, Long Live the King. It's coming out, by Larson Outdoor Productions is doing a great job for us. And we're going to be releasing that at the ISE show in booth 3041. And, we look forward to seeing all of you at the International Sportsman Show. And, I hope you all have a great week and a great weekend with your families. Go out fishing, go wet a line, tight lines to all of you. And, I hope the best for each and every one of you. And if you want to support us, make sure you go to the website, ncgasa.org. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.